We're back with more EDH gameplay. Today Bardo has brought back his Kellan the Kid, hoping to gain big value from casting spells outside his hand. Beto is running his Blinking Arthur Marigold Knight, looking to cheat and value creatures and then flicker them so they stay on the field. I'm wandering around with Flubs the Fool, but make no mistake, this is a purebred play from Exile machine. And last up is Mark with Zevlor a Trill Exile. He'll be getting triple the value on all his spells that target a single opponent or permanent they control. Comment below who you think will take the win today and consider using our TCG player affiliate link to support the channel. Bardo wins a die roll and starts us off. Bardo draws for turn and plays a tap Citadel, passing to Beto. Beto draws and also drops a tap land. I play the first untapped land this game, but pass over to Mark, who also draws and plays a tap land. For turn 2, Bardo plays an island and passes for turn. Beto plays a plains for turn and casts an Izzet Signet. I draw, play a mountain, and then cast a Party Thrasher, setting up my discard engine that also lets me exile cards to play on my turn.
Tap draw. Swamp. I'll play Thermal Alchemist. Pass. We got some big defenders on here. I'm just playing this.
For turn 3, Bardo plays an untapped Hinterland Harbor and then casts Vega the Watcher, hoping to draw when casting outside his hand. We move over to Beto, who immediately drops an Aether Channeler. It enters and Beto opts to draw a card from its ETB effect. Beto then plays a land for turn and passes. I draw for turn and move over to my pre-combat main phase. With my Party Thrasher, I decide to discard a mountain and exile the top 2 cards of my library. I then choose Containment Construct as a card I can play until end of turn. I drop a land for turn and then cast a Containment Construct. Moving to combat, I swing my Thrasher at Beto for 1 damage while Mark shortcuts to his upkeep to cast a Mystical Tutor. He has a trigger, and before he tutors, Mark taps his Thermal Alchemist on his turn to deal 1 damage to us all, and then untaps it from casting the Mystical Tutor. He tutors a Stitch in Time to the top of his library and draws it for turn. He plays a Swamp and then follows up with a Nightscape Familiar, passing to Bardo. Bardo drops his 4th land for turn and casts his commander, Kellan the Kid. His Vega triggers and he gets a draw from casting outside of his hand. Moving to combat, he swings the flying 2/2 at Mark. He passes and Beto moves to untap and draw.
There's a new card coming in. Stranglehold.
What does it do?
Opponents can't search libraries, and if you were to begin an extra turn, you skip that turn instead.
Ooh.
Hard.
Beto unfortunately misses a land drop, but slows the rest of us down by not allowing us to search libraries, turning off all ramp and fetch lands. He passes and I move to draw.
Pre-combat main phase, I'm gonna discard a
My
card
bad, I just drew that.
to
I also don't want Frank.
exile the top 2. I'm gonna discard the
Ramping over
forest, and I'm gonna exile with this guy so I can play it until end of turn. So I'm gonna exile Storm's Wrath, and then be able to play Command Tower until end of
There
turn.
you go.
I guess I exile this forest for nothing, so it'll stay exiled.
I opt to leave the force exiled forever.
Elkin Lair. All of our upkeeps, we exile a card at random from our hand, and we have to play it that turn or else it stays exiled.
Feeling like I'm going to be disturbing everyone's turn, I move to combat and swing another 1 damage at Beto. Moving to my end step, Mark pings us all for 1 damage. We move to his turn, and on his upkeep, I exile a card at random from his hand that he must play this turn. He draws and plays an island. He taps his Alchemist to ping us all for 1 damage. He then casts a Snapback, exiling the tutored Stitch in Time for its alternate casting costs. He bounces Kellan the Kid to Bardo's hand. The Alchemist untapped, but Mark taps it again, dealing another 1 damage to the table. He follows up with the reduced Windfall. His Alchemist untaps, and we all discard and draw 8 cards.
8 cards, boys. 8 cards. 8 cards. 8 cards, boys.
Now with a new hand, he casts a Charcoal Diamond and passes to turn 5. On Bardo's upkeep, he exiles a Swords to Plowshare that he must play this turn. He draws and plays a Plains. He decides to spend Search for Tomorrow. He also foretells the card. Moving to combat, he swings another 2 damage at Mark. In his second main phase, he pays to cast the Swords to Plowshare from exile. He targets Mark's Nightscape Familiar, and Bardo gets to draw a card from casting outside of his hand. The Nightscape is exiled and Mark gets to gain 1 life, and we move over to Beto's turn. On his upkeep, Beto exiles Ephemerate to the Elkin Lair. He draws and plays a land. Beto says,
Control plane, so this comes in untapped.
Okay. Oh, I don't have enough white. Let's go. It's okay, bro. I have no red.
Beto casts the Ephemerate and flickers his creature to draw another card. He then casts Talisman of Conviction. He then follows up with a strong Scroll Rack. And then
There you go. There you go.
So I can.
he passes, and on my upkeep, Mark exiles an island from my hand. I draw, and in my first main phase, I discard an island with my Thrasher. I exile the top 2 cards and decide to keep Phyrexian Altar as a card I can play until end of turn. I play my island from exile.
Oh, my non-creature spells that I cast from exile have Convoke. So I could tap 2,
Cool.
3, cast the Altar.
Fire.
After convoking out my Phyrexian Altar, I decide to cast my commander Flubs the Fool. He allows me to play another land for turn, and since I have cards in hand, I must discard a card when I play that forest. I discard Echo of Eons to my graveyard.
Thanks going on, bro. I'm gonna just pay 2
He
to,
is.
not really. I'm just gonna, I'm
chill.
gonna foretell 2.
Oh, okay. I like what you're doing. Hey, you know what? I see what you're doing.
I move to my end step and Mark pings us all for another 1 damage. On his upkeep, Mark exiles a Mithril Coat and draws for turn. He plays a mountain for turn and casts Magnus the Red. He passes and his coat is lost in the void forever. For Bardo's turn 6, he exiles a Monstrous Vortex on his upkeep and draws for turn. He decides to cast a Monstrous Vortex, drawing a card from the cast with Vega. Moving to combat, he swings 2 damage Bethel's way and passes the turn.
Play this for turn. It's pretty good.
Bethel gets a land exiled and casts a Rebounded Ephemerate on his upkeep. He flickers one of his creatures and draws another card. He casts a Mind Stone. He then uses it right away to cast Beza the Bounding Spring. On ETB, he gets to create a treasure, gain 4 life, create 2 1/1 fishes, and draw a card. He plays his land for turn and scries 1 to the bottom. He passes and we move to my upkeep. I exile a useless Nature's Lore from my hand because of the Alkan Lair. I draw for turn and then discard Farseek with my Thrasher on my main phase, exiling it under my Containment Construct. I exile 2 cards and choose Veronica Descended Scribe as a card I can play until end of turn. I pay 3 mana to cast Veronica. My Flubs triggers and I must discard a card. I discard Velica Exploration, but discard it under my Containment Construct so I can play it until end of turn. I then decide to convoke out the Velica Exploration since my Party Thrasher gives convoke to all non-creature cards I cast from exile. My Flubs triggers and again I have to discard a card, but this time I make a junk token because of my Scribe. I move to my end step and Mark pings us again for 1 damage. On Mark's upkeep, he exiles Gutter Snipe that he must play this turn. He pays to cast a Gutter Snipe. He follows up with a Hadi Jin, reducing his instants and sorceries by 1. Moving to combat, he decides to swing 4 damage in the air at me with his Magnus and creates a token on the hit. He passes and on Bardo's upkeep, he removes the last counter from his Search from Tomorrow, casting the card and getting to draw from Vega. With Stranglehold out, he still cannot search his deck and the spell fizzles. He also exiles a weird looking Rhystic Study from his hand that he must play this turn.
Okay, draw for turn.
Do you pay the what?
Bardo plays a land for turn that pings Mark for 1 damage. He then casts a Rhystic Study from exile, drawing another card from Vega. Bardo then casts another 3-drop, the Reality Chip. Not wanting to attack, he passes. On Bethel's upkeep, he exiles a Solemn Simulacrum from his hand. He draws for turn.
Paying the 1 to the wrist.
Not always pay the 1, bro.
Sage of the Falls.
What does it do?
When it enters, or another non-human creature enters the battlefield under my control, I may draw a card. If I do, discard a card.
You were so excited. That's such a
that's
generic blue ability. Wait, what?
Bethel casts his creature, paying the 1 for the study. He gets to draw a card and then discards a card. He follows up by casting the Solemn Simulacrum, unable to pay the Rhystic tax. He opts to tutor a land to the field first and then draws and discards a card. Moving to combat, Bethel decides to swing his 2 non-token creatures at me, but I respond by casting a Constant Mist, wanting to cast a card out of my hand anyways. My Flubs triggers, and I no longer have any cards in my hand, so I get to draw a card. On my upkeep, I exile my only card in hand, Dark Orlock Grizzled Genius. I draw for turn and then immediately discard my card, Song of Creation, with my Party Thrasher's ability. I discard it under my Containment Construct so I can play it until end of turn and make another junk token. I exile 2 cards and decide to choose the Elder Gargaroth as a card I can play until end of turn.
Alright, first I gotta cast the dock, right? It makes my voice reduced. I'll cast the dock. I have no cards in hand, so Flubs will let me draw. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to cast my Elder Gargaroth.
That's the Reachy boy.
Yeah, this one is 6/6 with reach. Trigger, I have to discard a card. Discard this.
I cast both the Dark Orlock and Elder Gargaroth from exile, letting Bardo draw 2 cards from the spells while I draw a card and then discard that card. I then convoke out my Song of Creation by tapping some of my creatures. When I cast a spell, Bardo gets to draw another card, and I draw a card from Flubs since I have no cards in hand. I finally play a land for turn, triggering Flubs to draw another card and exile the top card from my deck with Velka Exploration. I then play an island as my second land for turn, drawing another card and exiling another card. I drop another island as my third land for turn because of my Song of Creation, this time discarding a card but missing the Velka trigger. It has no real impact on the game and we move to my end step. Mark pings us for 1 damage and my Velka deals 1 damage to my opponent and returns my card to the graveyard. On Mark's upkeep, he exiles a land from his hand and decides to play it for turn.
Okay, alright, I'm just gonna do this now. I should have done it on my turn to deal extra damage. I'm gonna crack the Evolving Mouse to do
Can't search. You can't search.
Oh fuck, that's right.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll just let that. We're gonna let that sit. We're gonna let that simmer.
Yeah, that's
We're gonna let that simmer.
Yeah.
We're gonna let him simmer.
Yeah.
He's simmering.
Settle down. Settle
Thank
down,
you.
buddy.
You always have a card like thank you.
This may be the longest our pod has gone without any board wipes being played, allowing everyone to build up as a threat with a ton of support in play. Mark moves to combat and swings his Magnus at Betho this time for 4 damage. He creates another token. In his second main phase, Mark casts a strong Blue Sun's Twilight with X equaling 5 from all his cost reduction and paying the Ristic tax. He pings us with his Alchemist for 1 damage that then untaps and another 2 damage from his Gutter Snipe. He contemplates targets as he wants to take my big 6/6 Reacher, but I tell him I'll sack the creature in response to my altar. He decides to gain control of Bethel's Beza, making a token copy of it. The token enters and he gets to make a treasure and draw a card. He passes. Bardo untaps for turn 7 with a ton of cards in hand. On his upkeep, he exiles Witch Enchanter.
No, we need to slow down Frank, bro. Don't listen to him.
No.
No, we need to start doing something over here, bro. He's doing too much.
We need to start doing something over there, bro. I'm at 26. You have so many pingers and damage. Like that's all I'm
You're
saying.
not wrong. You're not wrong.
That's all I'm saying.
You're
But
wrong.
none of this
doesn't
stuff.
have anything-
But none
yeah,
of this
he can't
stuff is
take-
targetable.
Yeah, you can't.
That's
take-
true.
The table talk politics have begun, and honestly, we're all scared of one another. Bethel's hasty commander, along with Scroll Rack, allows him to drop any threat he has in hand to the board. But I also have my Song of Creation that draws me 2 cards every time I cast a spell.
I think
This
we'll
is
take
for.
the score.
Let's go. That's what I'm saying.
No,
Scroll
that's-
rack?
that's-
I'm being honest, like
Were you gonna do something crazy or what, beta?
Yeah, that's just
Alright, then never mind.
Bardo decides to cast the creature from Exile and destroys Bethel's Scroll Rack, drawing a card from Vega. He follows up with a turn 7 Arcane Signet. He then casts a Raven form that was foretold, getting to draw a card from Vega. Mark sways him to exile my Elder Gargroth, but I respond to the target by sacking it to the altar to make 1 mana. Bardo then passes the turn, discarding down to hand size. We move to Bethel's turn, and on his upkeep, he exiles Echoing Assault from his hand. He draws and then casts a Sun Titan, paying the 1 tax. On ETB, he returns his Scroll Rack to the field.
Everyone's bricked up, bro. Everyone got puzzle pieces, bro.
Moving to combat, he swings his Solemn, Sage, and 2 tokens at me. I block the Sage with my Party Thrasher and take 4 damage from the attack.
That's it, beta?
Yeah, that's all I got.
Lame ass turn.
Stupid.
Bethel passes and I move to my upkeep. I have no cards in my hand and just draw for turn. In my main phase, I discard with my Party Thrasher to see 2 cards from my deck. I discard a Rampaging Balance under my Containment Construct so I can play it until end of turn and also make a junk token. I then exile 2 cards and decide to keep Reap as a card I can play until end of turn. I start by casting the Rampaging Balance from Exile. I don't pay the Ristic tax, drawing a card from Flubs, and then another 2 from the Song of Creation. I play my first land for turn, making a 4/4 beast and discarding with Flubs. I also have a Velka Exploration trigger that we catch later on. These triggers only add to the amount of cards I play for turn, so it doesn't really have a big impact. I then play a second land for turn, making a second beast and drawing a card with Flubs since I have no cards in hand. I play my third and final land for turn, making yet another beast, discarding a card, and exiling Reality Shift to play. I pay 1 blue to cast a Reality Shift since all my cards from Exile are reduced by 2 from the Dock Orlog. I target Mark's Gutter Snipe and he responds by tapping his Alchemist to deal 1 damage to the table. He then casts Reverberate, copying my Reality Shift. He untaps his Alchemist and deals 2 damage with his Gutter Snipe. His copy targets my Baloth, but I sack it in response to make 1 mana. His spell fizzles and Mark's Gutter Snipe is exiled while he also gets to manifest the top card of his library. I then finally get to draw with Flubs and another 2 from the Song of Creation from casting this spell. I then decide to sack all 3 of my junk tokens to exile the top 3 cards of my library to play until end of turn. I then flash back my Echo of Eons from my graveyard, letting Bardo draw a card. Bardo responds by casting an Arcane Denial, countering the spell and putting a delay trigger for both of us to draw. It resolves, and then I draw 2 cards from casting the spell and discarding 1 with Flubs. It's safe to say for the rest of this turn, I will be drawing 2 and discarding 1 because of Flubs, discarding to the Containment Construct so I can play those spells this turn. I discard Oko Thief of Crowns to my construct. I then convoke out my Oko from Exile. I have some draw triggers, but Bardo responds by casting Force of Negations for its alternate casting cost. The spell is countered and exiled, and Bardo gets a draw since I didn't pay the 1. I also draw 2 cards and then discard an Azusa Lost But Seeking into exile. I then pay a green to cast Azusa from exile, drawing 2 cards and exiling Horn of Bounty under my construct. I then cast the Horn of Bounty, letting Bardo draw another card while I also draw and discard Elixir of Immortality to exile. I cast the Elixir for free from exile thanks to Doc Orlok, drawing 2 and discarding Return to Nature into exile. I then cast a Return to Nature with Convoke that targets Bethel's Stranglehold. I draw 2 cards and discard River's Rebuke into exile. I then drop 2 lands for turn, discarding some cards and exiling 2 cards from the Valakut. I casted 3 visits from exile, drawing 2 cards and discarding Valdorn Dreadwolf Herald into exile. I get a land into play and miss one of my Valakut triggers. I then cast the Feldorn, drawing 2 cards and discarding 1 into exile. I then cast a Lotus Cobra from exile, drawing 2 cards and discarding into exile and making a wolf token with Faldorn. I now have a creature to sack for mana along with the cost reduction to cast any spells that are 1 pip and 2 generic or less from exile for free essentially.
This is Frank's game, bro. I feel like none of us really casted our spells, bro. Frank just made us cast ours, bro.
I follow up with the Library of Light, drawing and discarding into exile while I also make a 2/2 wolf. I then cast one of the strongest cards in the deck, Iruth Tormented Prophet. She turns all my instances of 1 card draw into 2 cards exiled from my deck. When I cast her, I draw 2 and discard 1 into exile, making a 2/2 wolf. Going forward, all cards I cast will exile 4 cards from my deck instead of drawing a card while also making a wolf token. I cast a Soul Ring for free from exile, exiling 4 cards and discarding a card and making a wolf. I finally find one of my finishers with Keeper of Secrets. I cast it immediately, exiling more cards and making a wolf token that I have been sacking for mana to cast my spells. Now when I cast from exile, I can start dishing out big damage across the board based on CMC. With the win in sight, I cast a Glinthorn Buccaneer, exiling some cards and discarding a card, making a wolf and dealing 3 damage to Mark. I then cast Passionate Archaeologist from exile, exiling more cards and making a wolf token while dealing 1 damage to everyone from discarding a card and dealing 2 more damage to Mark. I then cast Reap by sacking my wolf token, dealing 4 damage to Mark, exiling 4 cards, making a new wolf token, and dealing another 1 damage to the table from discarding with Glinthorn.
Well, I think I'm gonna try and kill you guys. How many black permanents do you have? Alright, go ahead. You can respond to them.
From exile, I then cast my last damage dealer in Flaming Tyrannosaurus by sacking more wolf tokens. I dish out 14 damage Mark's way, exile 4 more cards and make a new wolf token. I also discard and ping everyone for 1. When I cast spells from exile, I now do a guaranteed 3 damage to any target, along with 2 times the spell's CMC because of my 3 red cards in play. I think I'm gonna go ahead and let the audio play out the rest of this turn.
Then I will convoke out the Lost and the Damned, which makes sense. So now when I cast this, I have nothing, but I will discard a card. You guys lose a life. So marker lose 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and sack a dude. But
Bro,
make
do you have an
2
Immortal Sun?
to cast this guy.
What
I'm
does
gonna
it look
make 1, 2, 3, 1,
from
2,
Omnican.
3, 1, 2, 3, 2. Make 2 to cast Abundance. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Cast Ghostly Piffler. 1, 2, 1, 2, then 1, 2, 3, and then I will cast stacking them, making 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then 1, 2, 3. Cast Future Sight. Deal the last damage there. Let's get to the next game, boys. Next game.
I don't know what you did, bro. You're gonna have to explain your whole thing.
And with that, Flubs has wandered himself right into a victory. He knew exactly where he was going and exactly how he wasn't gonna get there. If you're interested in the deck at all, I have a whole deck tech on the channel with this exact list explained. All the small increments of value that I was able to assemble throughout the game turned the engines of the deck on. There was small passive draw, discard, and exile that was just enough to run away with that turn. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, use our TCG Player affiliate link when visiting the site, and subscribe for more EDH content.